All right, let's get right into it. Today we're going to talk about something that's always happening, but we rarely see it: the silent architecture of outcomes. It's really all about the hidden forces that drive, well, pretty much everything that happens. So let's dive in. Okay, so this one line is the key to everything we're talking about today. Outcomes are loud, patterns are silent. Think about it. We spend so much of our time and energy reacting to the big stuff, right? The huge events, the sudden changes. But what if the real story, the thing that's actually shaping your future, is happening quietly, right under your nose?
So let's start with the obvious part, the loud outcome. This is that big moment, the thing that gets all the attention, the one everyone's talking about.
Imagine a company, maybe a project you're on, or even a relationship. On the surface, everything seems totally fine, predictable. It's just business as usual. There are no huge red flags, nothing feels like it's about to break. It all just feels stable, secure.
And then, bam, the earthquake hits. A huge round of layoffs gets announced. A major project you've been working on? Canceled. A leader you looked up to? They just resigned. It feels like it comes completely out of nowhere. It's loud, it's messy, you can't ignore it. That is the outcome.
But, and this is the most important part, that earthquake, that loud, shocking outcome, it was never the start of the story. It was the end. The real story, the one that matters, is the silent pattern that was building up all along. So let's take a look at how that happens.
And here's what's so wild about it. Look at these signs. Individually, any one of them is easy to just brush off, right? Hiring slows down? Maybe it's just for a quarter. Budgets get a little tighter? Well, that happens. But when you start to see them together, they stop being random little events. They start to form a clear, undeniable pattern. These are the little tremors you feel right before the big one hits.
And this is where it all clicks. By the time that big, loud announcement comes out, the layoff email, for example, it's not actually new information. It's just the final domino falling. It's the public confirmation of a process that's been quietly happening for months. The real decision, the one that set all this in motion, was made way, way before it ever got loud.
So, okay, this brings up a pretty big question, right? Where do these patterns even come from? Why do they start? Let's stick with the layoff example, because you'll see these patterns can have two totally different origins.
Okay, so on one side, a pattern can be the result of what's happening inside the company. A leadership failure, maybe some poor long-term planning, or they got caught up in a hype cycle and just hired way too many people without a solid strategy. In that case, the layoffs are a direct result of those bad calls. But then, on the other side, sometimes the cause is completely external. Even the best-run companies in the world have to react to massive forces like a sudden market crash or a huge industry disruption. The silent pattern still forms, but where it came from is a completely different story.
So, understanding why patterns form is one thing. That's super useful. But the real skill, the one that really changes the game, is learning to actually see them happening before they get to that loud, messy conclusion.
This idea of focusing on the pattern instead of the outcome is not new at all. In fact, there's this piece of ancient wisdom from the Bhagavad Gita that speaks directly to this. It's an incredibly powerful thought that can really shift your perspective.
Now, a rough translation is this: you have control over your actions, not the results. Think about how profound that is. We get so obsessed with the outcome, getting the promotion, launching the product successfully, or trying to avoid the layoff. But this wisdom reminds us that our only real power is in our actions, the small, consistent things we do day in and day out that build that silent pattern.
So, here's the big takeaway from all this. Instead of just waiting around to react to the earthquake, you can actually learn to sense the tremors. This is where real control comes from. Not from trying to manage outcomes, which you can't, but from understanding and acting on the patterns that create them.
All right, let's go back to our earthquake metaphor one last time, because what happens after the shaking stops is just as important.
Even the most disruptive events, they aren't the end of the world. There's always an after. The dust settles, the ground finds its new level, and from that new, stable place, something new can start to grow.
And this is what it all boils down to. Outcomes are loud. They're designed to grab your attention, to make you react.
But the patterns, they're silent. They don't scream for your attention. They reward it. They ask you to just listen a little closer. And when you do that, you start to realize that every single end, no matter how loud or crazy it feels in the moment, it quietly carries the start of something new. It's the silence where a new pattern, a new opportunity is already beginning to take shape.
So that's the question I want to leave you with. Right now, in your work, in your life, what silent patterns are building around you? What quiet story is being told long before any of the noise begins? Thanks for joining me.